Welcome back to What Matters This Week. I'm Lauren Maloney. Joining us now is Tanya Marshall, Vermont State Archivist. Tanya, wonderful for you to join us this Sunday.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I asked you to join us just because of a thread, I should say, that got so much attention. And it was posted a couple of weeks ago, and it was just before restrictions kind of tightened back up again in Vermont. So it was November 14th. And really, you were comparing what we're going through right now in 2020 to the 1918 influenza pandemic. And actually, in a lot of ways, the pandemics were eerily similar. The one in 1918 started in March. Everything in 2020 kind of shut down in March as well. What surprised you when you started the research?
Sure. So I was seeing a lot of, questions come up on comparisons. We've already had a stay home, stay safe order, and yet having this revival back in the fall really surprised a lot of people. And so on that particular Saturday, our last comparison for a pandemic is the 1918. Of course, we had a lot of epidemics, but they weren't as widespread and far-reaching as the influenza epidemic. And so as part of that process, going back, and I actually didn't know, as I was kind of looking it up on a Saturday based on an inquiry that we've received, I decided that why not go with the thread and have, obviously when I hit send, everyone saw what I learned, but I was learning in the process at the same time, which is really the mission of the Vermont State Archives and Records Administration. We're a division within the Secretary of State's office, and our job is to protect and provide and promote and preserve public records to help everyone learn from them. And so seeing that the first statewide ban on public gatherings, as they referred to them in 1918, and the parallels between social gatherings, was just too much to not share with the bigger community through our social media, which is Twitter primarily right now. So just going through the steps as that first order came through. The interesting part is it was local. There were local town officers at the time and local boards. And so they were definitely trying to curb the spread within their communities with their own orders, but it was not as being successful in having the State Board of Health, which predates the Department of Health, to step in and decide on a statewide ban on public gatherings was very interesting. And then watching what the response was. And at the same time, knowing that we're going through another one of having at 10 p.m., a new order on social gatherings and the closure of bars, and then finding in the Rutland Herald, for example, or other newspapers how, the same aspect or same thing was happening in 1918. And bars, ironically, were also a focus then. So they were getting a lot of feedback to make sure they shut the bars, and watching some spreads happening related to public gatherings where people were not following the ban. So it's just very interesting, and watching it go for a month, which is exactly what our current order goes through December.
Yeah. When people say this is a once in a lifetime type thing, or this doesn't always happen, you're the one with the opportunity to say, actually, yes, it has, and we can learn from it, right?
Absolutely. One of the missions that we've had are continuing issues, and it was started by my predecessor, retired State Archivist Gregory Sanford, over 2 decades ago. And for each issue that comes up in Vermont, to see whether or not it's happened before, and the circumstances might be a little bit different. And obviously the times are a little bit different, but maybe they aren't as different as we think. And so we've been doing continuing issues for over 20 years. And this is we haven't had a pandemic come up since we started continuing issues, and normally we use our website to provide information, and I think we will put the pandemic more detailed on there. But given the social media part of Twitter, it's just a great way to get some information out to a lot of people in a short period of time, while they're consuming a lot more information. And this is just another continuing issue. And so we're also following what happened with the vaccinations related to epidemic. Obviously there wasn't, the flu vaccine is something more recent, but watching the state response and how that was carried out for something like the measles, which is probably the most recent epidemic that we've had, in the 1960s, and there was a fear of having that happen again in 1970. But before that, just watching how vaccinations came on board. So there's a lot of parallels between the response for curbing the spread, which we're seeing right now, and also what we will hope to see maybe with COVID-19 is the vaccination distribution and how the state responded to that.
In some of the newspaper articles that you linked to those tweets, yes, I saw the ban on public gatherings, a lot of mention about quarantining, and there are pictures that we can find too back then of people wearing masks, but I didn't see a lot of reference to social distancing. So I wonder what you thought about that and whether really that is a new term.
Ironically, it's not. So one of the interesting parts of watching, or not watching, I guess reading, right? Records from that time period wasn't so much watching something, is the Board of Health was spending a lot on epidemics, smallpox, very prevalent, measles, and so forth. And so in their 20th report, the State Board of Health really landed on that it is a human, what they call the human problem with communicable diseases, and that people spread them by socializing. And it has not changed at all. So in terms of watching response on social gathering, they called it public gathering. Back in 1918, very different. People didn't travel as much. We're not talking about interstate travel. The home was really the source of entertainment. So even though they had movie houses and churches really where people congregated, schools, and so forth. So, it wasn't the same as the social distancing that we see today, but the the Board of Health, I should say, for the time period, even prior to the pandemic of 1918 and 19, very much knew that people had to be separated and keep their distance in order to keep the spread from occurring. And we see that the same, and I think it's just universal in terms of the public health response when it comes to certain types of diseases.
Tanya, there was a sentence that stuck out in an article that appeared in the Barrie Daily Times. It said, quote, "In Burlington, the city has voted $1,000 to be used for relief work." So in a way, were people back in 1918 also dealing with this economic issue, making sure there was enough economic incentives to keep families going, but also the economy going?
Yeah, later on the newspapers, and I haven't personally done too much research on that yet, is trying to compare the economic differences between 1919, which is really when they started looking at the impact of the bans and the closures. I would have to say, based on some of the newspaper reports, that yes, the towns were given certain amounts of relief, but it's probably not the scale of what we really saw or will see in terms of needs occurring for the 2020. So there is something to be said. I just personally have not had the chance to fully research that yet. But I did see, and also reports are a little bit difficult for that time period. They would report on an annual or biannual basis. So the day-to-day kind of reporting really had to come from the media, and we're really grateful to have, the newspapers as part of the state archives and have them available to do that research, because it really gets into the human picture that we don't always see from the public records directly in terms of reporting. So what they'll have in their reports is showing how much aid was provided, but with not a lot of context of how it was actually used. So we really rely on what's in the papers for that.
The influenza pandemic killed 675,000 Americans, and there was a case-by-case breakdown of towns and communities. Actually, Washington County, even then, had really high case numbers. And Governor Phil Scott has recently said it's become an epicenter now. Here we are, in the almost the last week of November. So does that strike you also as similar? What did that say to you?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And the interesting part for that is that when I was tweeting out that report, Washington County currently wasn't as listed as the epicenter. We knew about the certain events for that. State government at the time was centered in Montpelier. So that is an area where there was a lot of activity. Right now, the Department of Health is located in Burlington, but that did not happen until many years later. So I have a feeling that it had to be more on the fact that that was the political base, is Washington County, and you had people traveling from all over related to that. I'd have to check to see exactly what other activities could have been occurring, but it is ironic in some ways, but I'm not clear exactly what the difference is and why that was Washington County versus, most people I think nowadays would probably gravitate towards Chittenden County based on the population. And I would say Chittenden County still had probably higher population, but I'm not certain on
that. There were comments to this thread that said, thank you for the history lesson, that it was fascinating. But do you also hope in an odd way that it provides comfort to people that we've been here before, we've been through it once, it subsided by the summer of 1919, that really as a country, we can do it again?
Yeah, I mean, the part of the past is that we can always learn from it. Mentioned it's not, the circumstances aren't the same, but oftentimes we're not going through something new for the first time. It's just, the characters have changed, maybe the characteristics have changed. My hope is that we kind of see that, we made it through the 1918-19 pandemic. It's also been a very long time since that has occurred. But, just watching, parts of the press in the newspapers about thanking people for just being diligent and following what, the public health officials were asking them to do. I think there's a lot to be said. Again, it's the same type of communicable diseases that are occurring, and we can learn a lot from just that experience that we see through our past generations with the epidemic for influenza.
Tanya Marshall, it was a fascinating thread. I appreciate it so much. People should take a look at it. It's at VT State Archives on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.